legislation which directly governs the National Prosecuting Authority. And you refer to the section which sets out the requirements of a person who may be appointed as National Director of Public Prosecutions. What are those requirements?
Chair, is that the person must possess legal qualifications that entitle him or her to appear in all courts in the Republic of South Africa. And also that that person must be a fit and proper person. With due regard to his or her experience, conscientiousness and integrity, to be entrusted with the responsibilities of the office of the NDPP.
And particularly relevant to your particular case are the provisions, or were the provisions, of Section 12 of the Act, which we will deal with when we come to the Constitutional Court matter involving yourself and others.
Okay.
Where certain subsections were declared unconstitutional.
Yes.
Let's then deal with Section C, which details the circumstances preceding and surrounding your appointment as National Director of Public Prosecutions in 2013. Would you tell the Chair about those circumstances, please?
Yes, Chair. Chair, as I've pointed out that I was conducting my own private practice in Durban. Then during 2013, I cannot remember the exact date and the month, I received a call from Mr. Michael Halley, who was the President's legal advisor, former President Jacob Zuma's legal advisor at the time, who wanted to see me. And I obliged. He came over to see me at my office in Durban. We had a discussion with him. He told me that he was looking for a candidate to fill the position of the National Director of Public Prosecutions, as he was mandated by President Zuma. He had with him 3 names that he told me that he had been were given to him by colleagues in Durban. But when he bounced off those names to those colleagues, they were of the view that I was the person who could do the job. And my name was not amongst the list. Hence, he then came to see me. He expressed then he asked me if I was willing to take over I would be willing to take over the appointment.
Before you go there, Mr. Nxasana, in relation to the process by which you had been selected, did you mention anything other, more formal than bouncing your name off other colleagues?
No.
Right. Sorry, proceed, if you will.
Then, Chair, I was surprised, I was shocked and surprised, because not in a bad way that I never thought that one day I would become a prosecutor, because I chosen to become an attorney. But it also at the same time humbled me that my colleagues, especially from my division, saw something in me that I could head an institution of that magnitude. Then I felt that I remember that I even remarked to him that if my colleagues have confidence in me, so why not? Why should I not have confidence in myself? Then I was willing, as everyone would be willing to serve the country. I thought that my colleagues saw some qualities in me that entitled me to be appointed to that position. I then agreed.
Did you subsequently meet with the President at the time?
Yes, a meeting was then scheduled to meet the president at his official residence in Pretoria. And I remember, I think it was around August, if I'm not mistaken, if not before that. I went up to meet the president at his official residence in Pretoria. Present at the meeting was the president, Mr. Hali, and I think there was also the lady who I was later told that she was also the legal advisor to the president, Miss Bonisile Machene.
Can you spell that surname, please?
Spelled M-A-K-H-E-N-E, Machene.
Okay, thank you.
Well, based on what Mr. Hali said to you, it seems that what you are saying is he said to you, your peers suggested that you might be the right person.
That is correct, Chair.
And you had not applied for any position.
No, no, Chair. Not
Yes.
Chair.
Okay.
Yes. What happened at that meeting?
At that meeting, before I went to the meeting, Mr. Hali assured me that I was not going to an interview of any sort. The president wanted just to see me, interact with me, and I should relax. And that's exactly what happened. It was not an interview, it was an interaction. And what I remember quite vividly, what the president asked me of was that, did I have courage to take up that position? To which I responded by saying, yes, I do. And I even said to him that knowing that he has been through hardships, I thought that he meant that I would be able to take decisions independently and firmly. Then I said, yes, I have that courage. And also, I remember he even said something in isiZulu that it's like that position might be like the people stepping you with arrows, something
well,
like
you
that.
can say it
In
in
isiZulu.
isiZulu and then seek to translate, interpret it for
Okay.
people who might not understand isiZulu.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think, if I remember well, he said that position is like ifana na nemkhonto esuke ibheke kuwena, which I understood him to be saying that it was a very difficult task to handle, and he described it as like a arrows,
position where spears would be
directed at you. Yes,
Yeah,
spears,
that's
yes.
the Zulu
Literally,
part.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
It's a position where spears could be directed at you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything else about the meeting that you wish to tell the chair?
Then, Chair, about I was leaving the meeting, I think the meeting lasted for not more than 30 minutes. Because I remember it coincided because I had to wait there. It was a date when I think the former deputy president of the country, Mrs. Mlambo Ngcuka, was there, I think, to meet the president before she was going to take up the position in I think is it in the Hague, if I'm not mistaken. They had a long meeting, then I had to wait. There were also other ministers there that were waiting to see the president. As I was leaving, I think it was Mr. Hali who asked if I had anything to say, and my response was that my father, who's now late, was a trade unionist, and I know that he would mention that the President, Jacob Zuma, was his comrade at the time. I felt that it was necessary to bring that to their attention. I think that was because I think that was prompted by a question that, I think the question was I related to Ceaser Massa, if I remember well. Then I said to them, Ceaser is my brother in isiZulu. Well, in English, is my cousin.
Is he? I know what you are talking about when you say in isiZulu and in English, because in the Zulu culture, you know, if you are of the same surname, you know, there is some kind of connection that is recognized, even though you might not be related in any way in the English sense. I think that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But with him, are you related in any way in the English sense?
No, blood relatives.
You are blood relatives.
Yes, our grandfathers are brothers.
Okay, all
Yeah.
right, thank you.
What happened then on the 30th of August 2013? Pursuant to this meeting, did you have further contact with Mr. Halley?
Yeah, 30th of August 2013, I remember I was running a trial at Umlazi Court in the civil trial. Then I received a call from Mr. Halley, who then asked me to send him my CV, which I then did.
Did he tell you anything of the President's intentions?
Yes, he told me that the President was under pressure to appoint, and he intended to announce my appointment.
Was your appointment subsequently announced by the President?
Although Mr. Halley had told me that the President was going to announce the appointment probably over the weekend or on a Monday, I think he told me that circumstances forced him, because the information leaked from the President's office, which then precipitated the President to make the announcement the next day, which was the 31st of August, 2013.
Do you know whether the position prior to your appointment of National Director of Public Prosecutions was advertised in any way?
No, I do not know. I had not seen any advertisement myself.
And apart from what you have told the Chair, are you aware of any more formal, or any other, for that matter, selection process?
No, Chair, I have no idea if there were other selection process or whether there were other candidates interviewed. But Chair, I think I must pause to mention that later on I discovered that Advocate Giba, as she was acting, she was promised by the then Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, Minister Jeff Hadebe, that she was going to be appointed on a permanent basis.
Yes, we deal with that later. For the moment, though, were you ever subjected to an interview in the formal sense, where you were asked questions about your own history, your own qualifications, your professional history,
except for the meeting,
attitude?
Except for the meeting that we had when I met President Zuma, Mr. Halley, and Miss Bonsile Mahene, nothing.
So there was no interview that one could describe as a formal job application interview in relation to your appointment? Unless
they were to ascribe that meeting as the formal interview.
Well,
none.
did it have the characteristics, to your knowledge, of what one would expect in the ordinary sense, a job interview to entail?
What I can say, Chair, is that recently there has been an interview to appoint the National Director of Public Prosecutions. If that's what you mean, that was not done. That process was not done.
Were you required to fill in any application form, setting out your personal history, your details, and similar matters?
No, Chair.
You did, however, complete a security clearance application.
Yes, I did. I completed it only after I was appointed and I was in the office. I think it was around December in 2013.
Did you sign any other document apart from your security clearance application prior to being employed?
I would have signed my employment contract as well as the oath of office before Judge President Mlambo.
You did, of course, as you said, you were asked to finish your CV, which you did.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
You then would have arrived at the NPA during October, is that correct? Of
That-
2013.
That is correct. Excuse me. That is correct, Chair.
What did you find on your arrival?
Chair, I received a welcome from the personnel at NPA. At one stage, the Minister of Justice, Mr. Khadebe, also came to the head office to introduce me. And I can say I was warmly received.
Prior to your assumption of duty, but after the announcement of the appointment, had you been in touch with the acting National Director of Public Prosecutions who was acting before you came to arrange for what would happen when you arrived, or there was no communication?
Chair, there was no communication. I didn't know anyone at the head office, except that when I arrived there, I identified the person that I knew in the leadership as Advocate Pinky Mokhatla, because she attended, I think, the university in KZN in Durban, and she qualified there and she practiced there as an advocate. And she was also my colleague in the Black Lawyers Association. That's where I knew her from. But to answer the question, there was a time when the CEO at the time, Advocate Karen van Rensbeck, and the Deputy CEO, that was Ms. Beryl Sisulu, they phoned me and they wanted to come and meet with me just to give me a briefing of what I should expect when I get to the NPA. They came down to Durban and we met, I remember, in one of the hotels in Umhlanga. Then, as we were in the meeting, I then subsequently received a call from a person who introduced herself as Advocate Giba, who wanted to see me as well, and she then appeared to be around Durban. I had to hastily go and meet her. I didn't know whether it was a coincidence that she knew that they had come down, the CEO and the Deputy CEO, but I later learned that they got a hiding because they came down to see me from Advocate Giba. When I met Advocate Giba, she was in the presence of the Director of Public Prosecutions in KZN, Advocate Moipon Noko, and the gentleman that I knew very well from KZN in Durban who at the time was Colonel, is it BW Mhlongo, Colonel Mhlongo, at the time. We exchanged pleasantries with him because he's a Mhlongo and my late mama's surname is Mhlongo, and we used to call each other cousins until his involvement in all of this thing, and which I didn't know then. We stopped having that relationship.
Well, you deal with some of those issues in due course.
Yes.
Perhaps we should take it step by step. The acting National Director of Public Prosecutions at the time of your appointment was Advocate Giba.
That is correct.
Was there any formal or even informal handing over process where the two of you sat down and exchanged details of the state of the NPA, the prosecution's current policies and the like?
No, Chair.
Did you instruct Advocate Giba to conduct a formal handover process on your appointment?
I did, Chair, and she didn't comply.
In relation to the date of your assumption of duty, when would that have been? In a week's time, when you asked for the head to do a handover? Week's time, 2 weeks' time, or much later?
Chair, there were a lot of things happening, Chair. Because when I would think it was around December, if I'm not mistaken, December of 2013.
Okay, thank you.
At the time, we know from other evidence, and the Chair will be informed perhaps in relation to these matters in more detail in due course, but we've heard that at this time there were investigations being conducted in regard to the conduct of General Boyson in KwaZulu-Natal, what has been called the Cato Manor Death Squad investigations.
Yes, Chair.
Were you given any information about those investigations on your assumption of office?
No, Chair, I wasn't given any information.
How did you learn of the investigations, if at all?
Apart from the fact that coming from Durban, I knew that there was an investigation whilst I was still in private practice, because the matter was at the court that I appear frequently. That's the Durban court. But when I assumed the office, I didn't know what was the status of that matter, and I wasn't informed about it. I only learned about it when I read the newspaper. I cannot remember where I was coming from, but I was traveling. I was on the plane, reading, if I remember, the Business Times. Then I saw that there was a decision by Judge Goven in KZN.
G-O-R-V-E-N.
G-O-R-V-E-N, yes. Criticizing the manner in which Advocate Giba handled herself in the matter. But of particular concern was also that the NPA was appealing the decision of Judge Goven. Then I became worried because, as the head of the institution and taking into consideration the seriousness of that matter, I thought that it was appropriate that I be familiarized with what was happening. I immediately summoned I think it was Advocate Giba, and asked her to tell me what was happening in the matter, and summoned the prosecuting team. They came over to my office in Pretoria, and we went through the evidence there, and then I got the briefing Chair, I think they have spoken about the matter previously, but
Yes.
of particular importance is that what I also found in the matter is that when Advocate Giba authorized the racketeering certificate, but perhaps I must explain that the racketeering certificate can only be authorized by one person in the whole country. That is the National Director of Public Prosecutions himself or herself. And the National Director of Public Prosecutions cannot delegate that authority to anyone.
That is in terms of the National Prosecuting Authority Act, or in terms of the legislation.
In terms of the
relating
legislation.
to
Yes.
racketeering.
Yes, in terms of the
okay.
legislation to racketeering. Then in this matter, what I found is that Advocate Giba authorized the racketeering. She signed the racketeering certificate and authorized that General Boysen be charged with racketeering, which was then the subject matter in court. General Boysen challenged that, and Judge Govan found in his favor that there was no evidence justifying the authorization of the racketeering charges against General Boysen. But when I questioned Advocate Giba why she had to sign that, obviously bearing in mind that she was accessing her authority at the time before I came there, her response was that she relied, if I quote her, she said, I relied on these so-called experts, racketeering experts. And then I pointed out to her that
Was she pointing to certain specific people as experts?
Yes, she pointed at people, the prosecution team who were present.
Yes, okay.
Then I said to her, perhaps it would have been better. I wouldn't have expected her to go through the bundles and bundles. In fact, it was the boxes of evidence. But if I were her, I said I would have asked them to point me to the relevant evidence that points to racketeering, or to the relevant evidence that implicates General Boysen. And to my surprise, what they then produced...
I'm sorry. When you say she said she relied on the persons that she referred to as experts in racketeering,
yes,
was she saying that in relation to concluding whether or not a racketeering charge should be one of the charges against General Boysen?
That is correct.
So she was saying as to whether there was enough evidence or not to justify a charge of racketeering, she had relied on them.
That is correct.
That was your understanding?
That
of
was
the
my
evidence.
understanding, Chair.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay.
Yes. Then, Chair, I think it's on record that what was there in the file, in the docket, was a mere unsigned statement, not commissioned from one witness who left the country, as in Greece, is in Greece. And also the other statements were statements of, were hearsay statements which were not only hearsay, but twice remote hearsay statements. And Worship, my feeling was that there is no way. I then took them through and I explained to them, I convinced them that there is no way that we would succeed in appealing the decision of Judge Govan. And I then instructed them to withdraw the notice of appeal, which they then did.
You made a comment earlier on about who has power to authorize or sign a racketeering certificate or authorize that a person be charged with racketeering. And as I understand your evidence, you were saying that it's only the National Director of Public Prosecutions in the whole country who can authorize that a person be charged with racketeering. Is that correct?
That is correct, Chair.
And to show that authorization, he or she signs a certain certificate. Is that correct?
That is correct, Chair.
Now, I thought there was a point you wanted to make about that. I assume that Ms. Giba had signed that certificate, if she did sign it, at a time when she was acting National Director of Public Prosecutions?
That is correct, and because she was acting National Director, she had the power.
She had the power.
She had the power
so there's
to
no
sign.
issue about that.
The issue is that, Chair, the point I'm making is, before she signed the racketeering certificate, she had to satisfy herself that there was evidence just to justify her to sign the racketeering certificate. And I found her response to my question really puzzling, that she could only rely upon what she was told by the so-called experts. The prosecutors were leading the matter, because I think that was the reason why the legislature made that provision that it must only be the National Director of Public Prosecutions. That is, the National Director of Public Prosecutions is given the responsibility to satisfy himself or herself that because of the consequences flowing from being charged with racketeering. Yes.
So part of the point you are making is there must be a reason why the legislation said only one person in the whole country can make the decision whether a person should be charged with racketeering.
That is correct.
And that must be because of the seriousness of the charge of racketeering and its consequences on a person.
Yes.
And that although any prosecutor and any director of public prosecutions should satisfy themselves or himself or herself before deciding on any charge against anybody, this one is particularly serious.
It's very serious.
And,
Yes.
and the NDPP must take care to satisfy himself that there is, or herself that there is proper and sufficient evidence before authorizing it. That's part of the point you are making.
That's the point I'm making.
Okay, thank you.
You mentioned to the chair, Mr. Nxasana, that during the course of the conversation with Advocate Giba, you suggested that she might have considered actually examining the evidence and asking the prosecutors to point out the evidence to her on which she based her decision.
That is correct, Chair.
What do you recall her response to that intervention by yourself?
Chair, her response was that she relied on even if I quote her verbatim, she said, I relied on these so-called racketeering experts.
I understand you to say the persons to whom she referred as experts were in the same room.
That is
in the
correct.
meeting. What was their response when she said that? Did they say anything about whether there was evidence or were they conceding that there wasn't evidence?
Chair, the team, as far as I can recall, the team appeared to be divided on the issue, but they were of the opinion, I don't know, because they were quiet. They did not respond to when she said she relied on what they had told her.
Yes.
But then we went through the matter, and I made it clear. It became very clear that there was no evidence before in the docket to justify the racketeering. In fact, Chair, I went as far as to if I may be allowed this latitude, I went as far as to advise them that, you see, I come from Durban, and some of the victims of the so-called Cato Manor death squad were people that I knew personally. I even told them at that meeting, and I told them that perhaps I was trying to dispel any feeling that I might be taking sides. I wanted to display to them that if there was any person that is really very close to what is happening in KZN, it's myself other than them. Because even the people who died under the so-called, the alleged death squad are the people that I knew. And I counted to them the names of those people that I knew very well. I was trying to convince them, and I said to them, you see, I understand that you mustn't be carried away by these racketeering charges. You may also consider the predicate charges, predicate offenses, murder, accessory to murder, conspiracy to murder, if there is any. But really, in the docket, there is none. There is no evidence of racketeering against General Poison. And if the docket still remains the same as I left it, my view is still the same.
Thank you.
Right. So, in summary, you learnt from sources other than sources in the NPA that Judge Gorvin had issued a judgment in which he was critical of the NPA stance in relation to charges against General Boyson.
I read from the newspaper.
You read from the newspaper.
Yes.
You then instituted your own inquiries within the office as Director of National Public Prosecutions.
That is correct,
You called Advocate Giba, who had signed the racketeering certificate, to account, basically.
That is correct,
You suggested to her that it would have been appropriate for her to satisfy herself directly by reference to witness statements and other evidence that there was indeed a basis for issuing the certificate.
That is correct,
You then understood from her responses that she hadn't had direct access or required direct access to evidence, but had rather relied on the opinions of others.
That is absolutely correct.
You then conducted the exercise yourself,
That is correct,
and
sir.
you came to a different conclusion.
That is so, sir.
You see, some of the witnesses who have come before me have suggested that what has happened in some of the cases is that people who were fighting corruption were being charged by the NPA with various crimes in circumstances where there was no evidence to support those crimes. The suggestion being that the decisions to charge certain people may have been influenced by reasons other than legitimate legal reasons. Now, I have to ask you this question. Did the persons that Ms. Giba referred to as experts in racketeering, did they at any stage say to you, here are certain documents which supported our opinion that General Poison should be charged? Either on that day, that meeting, or at any stage afterwards, did they ever say to you, no, our decision or recommendation to the acting NDPP was justified because of this and that and that and that?
Chair, I did ask them to produce at least evidence, at least prima facie evidence against General Poison. But they then referred to the statement of, I don't know if I may mention the witness by name.
I think you may. I think we may have been told. I think we may
Yes.
have been told. Yes.
Then they then produced the statement of a Mr. Danikos, who's a Greek national. It was an unsigned statement.
Won't you spell that name, please?
It's Danikus, Danikos. Yeah. Chair, that was an unsigned statement. Then when I asked for any other statement implicating General Poison, they then produced a statement. I cannot remember the name, but I'll try to recollect. It was a person who apparently was a security guard for a Stenga Taxi Association, who in his statement was alleging that a Mr. Mhlongo, who was a member of the executive committee of Stenga's Taxi Association, had collected monies from the association and told the association in this security guards present that that money was required by the general, and that he was present when Mhlongo and the chairperson at the time was Mr. Zondi of the Stenga Tax Association went to meet with the general at the gateway. Chair, that is the general. It doesn't even describe that it was General Poison. That is the problem. And but he doesn't say that he overheard the conversation between even that general and Mhlongo. That was the only evidence that they said that it implicated General Poison.
So this person who had signed this statement, you say he was a security guard, simply said he was present when somebody collected money and said it was for a certain general, or the general
Wanted the money? Yes.
wanted by the general.
Yes.
He did not mention who the general was. Is that
No.
yes? And that he was present also, or that the chairperson of the taxi association took it to
meet with the general.
general,
Yes.
and that he was present when he met with the general, or that didn't come out clearly.
It didn't come out clear, but I think he was in the vehicle as the VIP.
Yes.
As the
Yes,
VIP protection.
but also he didn't say who the general was.
Yes.
Well, those the only two documents they produced,
At the time, yes.
and they did that in that meeting,
In that meeting,
in Ms. Giba's presence.
in Ms. Jiba's presence.
And Ms. Giba didn't point to anything else she might have been told or shown in regard to what evidence there was.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Perhaps, Chair, that is why, if I follow the matter, I think when it came before you, if I'm not mistaken, I think that is why then subsequently I heard that Advocate Sean Abrams reinstated the charges, but I understand that people were sent to Greece to obtain a statement. Again, I'm told that that statement is written in Greece and it was translated by someone here.
No, I think it's important that while you are here, we get as much
Yes.
evidence as you have to inquire into these things, these matters, because it's quite a serious suggestion or allegation when it is said that the NPA or certain people within the NPA abused their powers to charge people against whom there was no evidence, and that they were motivated by certain illegitimate considerations. Because if there is no evidence to support those allegations against those people or against the NPA, then let us know. But
Yeah.
if there is evidence, then let us know. The nation deserves to know exactly what the position is, because the NPA is a very important institution in the country and in the fight against crime. and the nation needs to know exactly what the position is, and if there are people who did that, we must know if there's evidence that shows that that's what they did, and they will come before the commission, put their side of the story, and the commission will make decisions and findings in due course. And it was important that somebody like you comes before the commission, because you were, for a certain period of time, occupying this very important position of NDPP, and you left under certain circumstances, and in the public domain, there are all kinds of things that are said, but also there are judgments, court judgments that have dealt with that. It's important that somebody like you comes and tells the commission exactly what you know and what happened while you were NDPP, so that the commission can have as full a picture as possible before, in due course, it makes findings.
Yes, I appreciate it. Chair, can I make also this observation, because so that my evidence here is not taken out of context?
Yes.
I haven't suggested that there was no evidence at all against General Boysen's co-accused.
Yes, yes.
Yes. That just to make that one very clear.
Yes.
Because
but you are saying, with regard to
the racketeering charge against Boysen,
yes,
Chair, there was not a shred of evidence.
Are you saying anything in regard to any other charges? I can't remember whether that was the only charge he was facing. Are you saying anything about any other charges he may have been facing other than the racketeering charge?
Chair,
I just can't remember if it was just the racketeering charge.
Because in the main, Chair, perhaps just to unpack this matter, Chair, I even suggested, Chair, that if I were prosecuting that matter or directing that matter, I said to them, you could have approached one of the co-accused and turn him a 204 witness, because most of the evidence, I said to them, I'm based in Durban and come from Durban, and all that you are telling me here is what is in the public domain in Durban. We hear a lot of things about Ketomena at the time, and I told them that we would hear that when the members of the Ketomena unit had killed a person, they would plant a firearm, and then General Boysen would come and take over the scene, so to say. Those were the allegations. But then I said to them, these are just allegations, and without the evidence in the docket, we cannot prosecute, because we don't prosecute with emotions. And I tell you, this is what I would also hear about the Ketomena unit. And Chair, there was also evidence also in the way allegations, not evidence, in the docket, that one member of the Ketomena unit shot and killed a teenager at, I think, Impangeno is Kawin, when they were looking for a suspect. I don't know whether the suspect was related to this young man, but I think they recklessly opened fire and killed an innocent young man. That's a simple investigation. I've never been an investigator in my life, but I mean, you can collect evidence, match cartridges, spent cartridges, take the firearms for ballistic examination purposes and link the person, or even use the doctrine of common purpose to charge whoever. That is why I pointed out to them that they mustn't get carried away by this racketeering charge. But of particular importance, which I brought to their attention, that because if you want to charge a person with racketeering, you have to prove that there has been a pattern, and this pattern has been continuously happening for a particular period. And I said, if they want to alleged that Katomena, as the unit, which was based in Katomena, Chair knows where Katomena is, in Durban. And my difficulty was that at the time, General Boysen was not even a member of that unit, because he was the head of the Hawks in Durban, based at the now called Servamos building in Durban. And then to allege that he was managing the enterprise when he was based there, there was a disjoint. They were not going to succeed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Just to explain the reference you made to Section 204. Section 204 is a section of the Criminal Procedure Act, I understand, that is used to enable a co-accused to assist the prosecution and perhaps receive indemnity in the court's discretion as a result.
That is correct, Chair.
And that's what you were referring to.
That is what I was referring
earlier
to.
as having been a step that could and perhaps should have been taken.
That is correct, Chair. That is what I was suggesting.
The time at which you took office, October 2013, was a time when the former President Zuma was still being investigated. Is that correct?
That is correct, Chair.
Were you briefed on the status of that investigation?
Not at all, Chair. In fact, Chair, I've never even touched the docket relating to the former President Jacob Zuma. I understand that the docket was still in the possession of Advocate Giba and Mr. Hofmeyer, if I'm not mistaken.
Is it correct that the investigation was still going on at the time? Because remember, in 2009, charges were withdrawn. Did the investigation continue after they had been withdrawn?
Chair, my response to the question of the investigation, I understand quite clearly that the investigations had ceased by then, but I understand that the matter was pretty much very alive because there were challenges at the time. Then my response is in regard to that there were people who were still challenging the decision to withdraw charges against the former President Jacob Zuma.
Okay, so in other words, you are not necessarily saying there were investigators who were still continuing to investigate.
No.
That you don't know.
No, I'm not saying I don't know.
Yeah, you simply know that the matter.
There were court challenges.
There were court challenges relating to the dropping of the charges.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes. Perhaps my question should have been rephrased to more accurately reflect what you say in paragraph 29, Mr. Nxasana, where you say you were not briefed on the status of the investigation, rather than on whether the investigation itself was continuing.
That is correct.
All right, if we can move on then please to the events leading up to your own suspension. During your first year in office, there was not much more than the first year in office, but during that year, did you learn anything about the attitude towards you and the conduct towards you on the part of advocates Giba and Mxolisi? That's Lawrence Mxolisi and Nxasana Giba.
Yes, Chair. Chair, as I pointed out, that I was appointed on the 31st of August 2013 with effect from the 1st of October 2013. In a sense, it means that I had this whole month of September still in Durban to wrap up before I took office. Chair, I started to learn that during that period of September, because the announcement was made by the President, that there were people that were running around, driving around in the township where I grew up from, that is Umlazi, in my area, and that these people, male people, were stopping people, asking them about me, about my history, especially about my involvement in a matter that was publicized of murder around 1985. It didn't puzzle me at first, because I thought that it was part of the vetting process. But this thing gained its momentum until I got to the office. I then learned that there were members within NPA who were very much responsible also for that. I then subsequently received unsolicited statement in the form of an affidavit from one member of the NPA by the name of Terrence Juba, who was at the time, I don't know if he still is, a risk specialist at NPA, was based in Durban. He sent me an email, and in the email there was an affidavit. That affidavit forms part of the bundle here, where he was basically telling me that there was a campaign by Advocate Giba that to dig the dirt about me, so that the intention, the whole purpose was to embarrass me, so that the president will then remove me as the National Director of Public Prosecutions, and she would then stand a chance of being considered to either continue to act or to be appointed permanently. It is there. But it also, this affidavit, in this affidavit, he also states that there were two police members that were assigned to the DPP, that's the the Director of Public Prosecutions in KZN, Advocate Noko, who was stationed there at his office, who had received vehicles from the provincial office. At the time, the commissioner was Commissioner Mamonye Ngobeni, and that those people that were there, those two gentlemen, they were then tasked with going around finding any dirt about me. But he also went as far as recording this Colonel Mhlongo. Yesterday, I tried to get this recording. I only managed to get it very late because it happened in 2013 or 2014, where basically I could hear the voice of Colonel Mhlongo and Terrence Juba. Juba was playing along. Colonel Mhlongo didn't know that was recording him. He was basically saying that Giba had mandated him to go about digging dirt about me. They went so far as to, in that recording, saying that I think Terrence Juba had undertaken to hook him up with people from the Road Accident Fund, because the allegation was that because I was practicing as an attorney, they were alleging that I had embezzled clients' monies when I handled the Road Accident Fund claims. And also, I don't know how they got it from, and it's true that my wife at some stage was employed at the Road Accident Fund office in Durban. All of that is there, that my wife was also employed there, and that Terrence Juba was going to hook him up with the gentleman at Road Accident Fund so that they could give them evidence implicating me in all of that. They also refer in the murder charge that Terrence Juba could hear him saying that murder charge that you have in your possession, referring to Colonel Mhlongo. That was, it's there, it's there. I have it in the recording.
Because these are serious allegations, perhaps we should do you the favor of allowing to go through your evidence in the sequence you've settled it in your statement. You talked about people in Mxolisi informing you. This was before your appointment actually became confirmed.
It was confirmed.
Before you took office.
Yes, yes.
After its confirmation, but before you took office, trying to, as you put it, dig up information about your past.
That is correct.
That's the one set of facts that you placed before the chair.
That is correct.
You also mentioned earlier in your evidence the approach to you of two NPA officials.
Yes, Chair.
Now, what did they tell you? That's in paragraph 33 of your statement.
That is the one that I'm referring to. That approach, I meant the affidavit that I received from Mr. Terrence Juba.
And the other person?
The other person was Miss Queen Mhlongo, who was stationed at the NPA offices attached to the asset forfeiture unit.
What did she tell you?
She told me that Colonel Mhlongo was bragging, saying that in fact she also had recorded him. Unfortunately, we have lost the phones now and the recordings, but I listened to the recording myself. And in that recording, he was bragging that he claimed to know me very well, and he made a lot of false allegations about me in that recording. But of importance is that he was saying that he had been promised the appointment of the brigadier. He was accusing me of wanting to charge General Mxolisi, and that General Mxolisi, if he's not charged, General Mxolisi was going to make sure that he is appointed as the, he was going to be promoted as the brigadier.
Let's just take that slowly, because that's a lot of information.
Maybe before you proceed, Mr. Pretorius, just one line. At the time, going back to Mr. Yube's affidavit, at the time you got that affidavit, was Mr. Yube known to you?
Chair, no, it wasn't known to me.
So you received an affidavit from somebody that you had never met, that you didn't know?
Yes, but he's an employee of the NPA,
Yes.
and my details are
Yes.
there for them. Because
Okay.
I received on the official NPA email.
Okay, thank you.
So you've said in your statement that almost immediately after you were appointed, two NPA officials approached you. We'll deal with Mr. Joubert in a moment. The other person, how do you spell her name?
It's Queen Mhlongo. Mhlongo, it's Mhlongo.
Oh, right. Did she tell you anything about advocates Giba and Khwebi?
Except that, just if I can refresh my memory.
Yes, please do. Look at paragraph 33 of your statement.
Yes, Chair. That's the evidence that I've just given. That paragraph 33 talks to that, about the plot to oust me. That Colonel Mhlongo was the main person that was used by Advocate Giba to run the campaign.
And Advocate Khwebi?
Both of them, Chair.
You talk about two officials of the NPA One of them I understand to have been Mr. Juba that you
Yes.
talked about. Was the other one the person that you referred to as Queen Mhlongo?
That is correct, Chair.
Okay.
She was attached to the asset forfeiture unit based in Durban at the time, but she's no longer with the NPA. She's in
Okay.
the private
Okay, thank you.
sector now.
Did they approach you together as a team, or did they approach you?
No,
separately?
independent of each other, Chair.
These were two separate
Separate
independent approaches
incidents.
to you.
Yes.
Around about the same time,
Around about the same time, Chair. Yes.
during the month of September, before you, after you had commenced your duties as NDPP.
Yes, after I had commenced my duties, yes.
Okay, yeah.
And Chair, I think I must also mention that both, I think they were, Terrence Juba, and although he was a risk office specialist, I think his office was also in the same building as the office where of the asset forfeiture unit of the NPA in Durban. That is the
Where Miss Queen Mhlongo
Yes,
was
it's-
working as
yes,
well.
is it 185 building, Southern Life building? Yes.
These approaches to you, at whose instance were they made? Did you call on them to speak to you? Did they come of their own accord? What was the case?
No, Chair, they came of their own accord
And separately?
and separately. In fact, Chair, what I have not mentioned here in the affidavit is I've referred earlier to an incident when I said I was warmly welcomed at the NPA, and during that, I referred to the day when Minister Radebe came to introduce me. I gave a speech also there. We were at the auditorium. Chair, I then said, I remember saying that, Minister, no NDPP has ever finished his term of office. And I can assure you that I will finish my term of office. In fact, the NPA Act even permits me to take an extra period of not more than 2 years, and I'm sure that I will be here for the period of 12 years. I was saying that in jest. But
Yes.
what then happened is that later on, a lady was then seconded to my office as my secretary. And at a very late stage, she then said to me that she related a story to me. That she said she was present at when I gave that at that welcoming event. Then he said there was a gentleman. She was standing by the door, and a certain gentleman immediately passed a comment after I made those remarks and said, "You'll be surprised that we won't even last for a period of 3 months." As we continued working together then in the office, and she then happened to meet and know that apparently that person who made those comments was Mr. Lawrence Mxolisi.
So this lady who was employed by the NPA said a person was standing behind her
Yeah. Or next to her.
or next to her
Yes.
at the time when you made the speech
Yes.
after being introduced by Minister Jeff Radebe at the NPA to the NPA staff,
Yes.
said you will be surprised that you won't even finish 3 months.
That is correct, Chair.
And then that same lady later came back to you and said that person was Mr. Lawrence Mxolisi.
Yes, when she got to see him, when we had interactions with them in my
Yes.
boardroom. Yes.
Yes, okay,
And she identified him as Lawrence Mxolisi.
okay, thank you.
You've spoken then about the two NPA officials who approached you unsolicited and separately
Yes,
with information
yes,
about what other people in the NPA were doing to unseat you.
Yes.
Is that more or less an accurate summary? I don't want to put words in your mouth unnecessarily. We're going to go to the detail in a moment.
Yeah, but again, also, Chair, perhaps this might also become relevant. Also, during the, just to go back, during that September period of 2013, when the announcement had been made, before I took office, I remember I received a call from Advocate Mxolisi, commonly known as Advocate Mxolisi, commonly known as Sticks Mxolisi. I know that he was then subsequently one of the members of the Kasim Commission of Inquiry. He was also. He phoned me in the morning and said to me, apparently he made mention of a Mr. Mxwebi. He said he understand Mr. Mxwebi wanted to speak to me because he fears, or he has told him that he has been told that when I came to NPA I will deal with him. Which it took me by surprise, as I pointed out earlier on, that I did not even know him, I had not even met him, I didn't know anyone except the person that I later identified as Advocate Pinky Mokhatla.
The information that the lady gave you about the gentleman that was standing next to her, was that information solicited?
No, Chair.
Okay.
You said that Mr. Terrence Juba gave you an affidavit. That's part of the bundle.
That is correct, Chair.
In summary, what did Mr. Juba tell you in that affidavit, or what did that affidavit say? You deal with that in paragraph 36.
In summary, Chair, apparently Advocate Giba was going to Durban. I think it was on the day that I met her. And the protocol is that Terrence Juba, as the risk specialist in Durban, was responsible for security and risk. I think he was the head in Durban. He was the one who was going to fetch Advocate Giba from the King Shaka International Airport and drive her to her destination. But then Mr. Juba says that he then subsequently, when he had made arrangements to go and fetch Advocate Giba, he received a phone call from the Advocate Giba's secretary advising him that he was no longer going to be, it was not going to be him who was going to fetch Advocate Giba, and it was now going to be Colonel Mhlongo. And then he said he found that very strange because he talks about the security, the protocol, and the security risk attached to all of that. And then he made mention of a situation where he then made mention of these two police officers that were deployed to the DPP's office in Durban, Advocate Noko, and that when he challenged that because of the security risk and that they were not vetted, apparently his boss from the head office, Mr. Ramahana, flew down and came down and castigated him for that. Then he, in this affidavit, he then talks about the plot now that apparently Giba was running a campaign to get me removed. As he said to Mhlongo, or he said Mhlongo told him that.
Mhlongo told who?
Oh, sorry, Mhlongo told Juba.
Yes.
That Giba said to him, Giba doesn't trust this guy, who is the new NDPP, Mr. Nxasana, and that Mhlongo must go out and get some and dig some dirt about him. So
That's
that
you.
about me.
Yes.
The whole intention was to embarrass me, and that she didn't know me, but the whole intention was to embarrass me so that the president will remove me or will fire me as the national director, and she will then be considered to either continue to act or to be considered to be appointed on a permanent basis.
So the affidavit of Mr. Juba talks of a conversation between Colonel Mplongo and Mr. Juba.
Yes, that is
relates
correct.
what was told to Mr. Juba in that conversation by Colonel Mplongo.
That is correct.
And you related some of that. Yeah. Was anything mentioned in that conversation, according to Mr. Juba, about the road accident fund?
That is correct, Chair.
And is that what you've just told the chair?
That is what I've just told the chair, and also the issue about the cases that I had faced in about 2015. Sorry, in
And
1985.
Was anything said about the prior example of Mr. Stanley Gumede? Would you explain that briefly
yes,
to the chair?
Chair, yes. In that affidavit also, Mr. Juba refers to, he says that Colonel Mhlongo also told him that Mr. Stanley Gumede, who's the original magistrate in Durban, was the person who was considered for the position before myself. But that Advocate Giba ran the campaign to discredit him. And one of the things in that affidavit that Juba alleges is that Giba then they convinced one advocate, they call him a Kosi, in Durban to complain about the manner in which Mr. Gumede had treated her in court. As a result, Mr. Gumede had to face a lot of complaints, and he was investigated by the Magistrates Commission. The matter was all over the media, and the president that precipitated the president not considering him as the candidate. Then he says that they were using the very same tactic that they used against, and he was responsible, Mr. Colonel Mhlongo, in that campaign authorized by Giba.
Now, you've told the chair that this conversation between Mr. Juba and Colonel Mhlongo was recorded.
That is correct, Chair.
You informed the investigators that it had been recorded, but as of yesterday, we had not been, or the investigators had not been able to obtain the recording.
That is correct, Chair.
You managed to obtain the recording
yesterday after I had left you.
Okay. And you now have that recording.
That is correct, Chair.
Chair, we haven't had an opportunity, firstly, to hear the recording, secondly, and importantly, to transcribe the recording. I'm not averse to playing the recording should you require, Chair. In fact, happy to do so, but on the assumption that we haven't been able to recognize the witness in relation to the recording.
How long is the conversation in the recording?
Chair, I think it's less than 8 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. Or yes. 5 minutes, yeah.
Maybe during lunch break, I don't know if there could be a chance for you to hear it. I would not be insisting that it be heard today, if you'd rather let it be heard some other time, but...
well, it's just perhaps inconvenient for you, Chair, to hear the recording, which may be unclear in part without it being properly transcribed, but without a transcription,
If you...
It's not up to us to recognize the witness in the sense that we...
No, I would prefer that you hear it first so that you have an idea about its value.
Indeed, Chair, we'll do that over
before
the
I
long
allow
adjournment.
it. If once we have heard it, and if you say you take your submissions that it can be heard, then we can look at hearing it. But if there are circumstances that justify that it be heard on another day, that should be arranged. I'm sure Mr. Nxasana would make himself available. But obviously, to the extent that is possible, we would like to try and finish his evidence today. So it's just a balance to be struck.
Indeed, Chair.
Thank you.
Is this a convenient time then?
Yes. We'll take the lunch adjournment now. It's 1 o'clock. We will resume at 2. We adjourn.
Getting sick? No, I was sick. Now I'm getting better. Oh, you're recovering? Yeah.
Sounds like it's in your chest.
Yeah.
And your sinuses, hey? Yeah. You're like, yeah. Shame. So there are 2 Mxolongos. Is it? Or is there only one?
There's one Mxolongo. Yes, sir.
I thought there was one and it's Queen Mxolongo.
Oh, yes.
So
There's 2.
so there are
Queen
Yes.
worked in the NPA office, Asset
the
Forfeiture
criminal
Unit,
is
together
in a
with
separate-
Terrence. Yes, sir.
Okay, got you.
I
And
can
that's
hear
the
you.
video recording.
These are the